What's your favorite song?
Oh, I was just teaching it.
All the things. How does that go?
My student, yeah, we spent an hour working on that with my student.
That same song?
Yeah, well, maybe a couple of songs. We spent half the lesson looking at all the things you want.
We did it in the magical version, it's called magical, it's hardly ever magical. But we did a choral version of it.
This part too?
I never learned to go up.
I was telling this student that Joe Roll used to love singing standards.
Yeah.
And way back when he would go to the temple, he would have a special way of doing it where it would be the same key as the rest of the song. But most of the time,
No, it's not.
most of the time they are part of the same key, but when I'm turned over to it, it's a key and then modulates when you hit song.
It's the most beautiful love song.
It's a great song. Okay.
What's it called again?
You need to know it.
What's it called?
You, all the things you are. Look at this.
Good Shabbos. Shabbat Shalom. Find a seat. How you doing? So I think it is just 6 o'clock, so we're going to start. It's like a minute or two after 6, so we're going to start because there's bound to be someone online who's saying, it's 6 o'clock. Shabbat Shalom to everybody here. It's so nice to see you. And for those of you who did not get a chance to look at your email today, we are now calling ourselves an optional mask zone. Actually, that's not at all the wording we're using, but we are following the county guidelines, and so those who wish to wear masks can wear masks. Those who wish to not wear masks can not wear masks. And we're just happy to be together on this Erev Shabbat. So I always need to take a really good breath when I begin. Because, you know, it's a lot of hurrying during the week, and it's a lot of hurrying at the end of the week, and it's a lot of hurrying just to get to shul, to make sure everything is ready for Shabbos dinner when I get home. So it's nice to just stand here for a moment and welcome in Shabbat and be here. And we're welcoming people both near and far, and some who are sometimes far but now are near. Leah, welcome back from Modesto. So we're going to begin this evening on page 10 with Yedid Nefesh. Yedid Nefesh Havarachaman Mishach Avdach Eretz Hanach Yarutz Avdach Kemo Ayal Yishtachaveh El Mul Hadarach Ki Erav Lo Yedidutach Minofetzuf V'chol Ta'am. Last verse. Higalena ותרוס חביבי עלי את סוכת שלומך. תאיר ארץ בכבודך, נגילה ונשמחה בך. מהר אהוב כי במועד, וכונני כי מעולם. Yalla lai 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 lai, yalla lai 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 lai, yana nai 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 nai, yana nai nai nai, yalla lai 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 lai, yalla lai 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 lai, yana nai 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 nai, yabba bye bye bye, yabba bye 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 bye, yabba bye 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 bye, yalla lai 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 lai, yalla lai lai lai, yabba bye 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 bye, yalla lai 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 lai, yana nai 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 nai. Lechuneranana on page 11 to 12. Lechuneranana l'Adonai nari aletzor yishenu nekadma fana bitoda bizmirot nari alo nekadma fana bitoda bizmirot nari alo ki el gadol Adonai umelech gadol al kol Elohim asher biyado mechkerei aretz v'toafot harim lo asher biyado mechkerei aretz v'toafot harim lo asher lo hayam v'yasau v'yabeshen yadam etzal v'nishma hayam v'lo nishma v'adam shul v'avchem g'mirim v'amimon 40 שנה אקוט בדור, ואומרם טועה לבבהם, והם לא ידעו דרכי, אשר נשבעתי באפי, אם יבואון אל מנוחתי. Page 13. שיר לאדוני שיר חדש, שיר לאדוני כל הארץ. We're on page 14 at the arrow. C minor. ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו, ירם הים ומלואו, ירם הים ומלואו, ירם הים ומלואו. Now that you all know it, we're going to pick up the tempo. Here we go. ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ, ירם הים ומלואו, ירם הים ומלואו, ירם הים ומלואו, ירם הים ומלואו. יעלו שדי וכל אשר בו, אז ירננו כל עצי יער, לפני אדוני קיווה לשפוט הארץ, ישפוט תבל בצדק, ועמים באמונתו. Let's turn now to page 17 for Psalm 98. מזמור שירו לאדוני שיר חדש כי נפלאות עשה הושיע לו ימינו וזרוע קודשו הודיע אדוני ישועתו לעיני הגויים גילה צדקתו זכר חסדו ואמונתו לבית ישראל ראו כל אפסי הארץ את ישועת אלוהינו הריעו לאדוני כל הארץ פיצחו ורננו וזמרו זמרו לאדוני בכינור וכל זמרה בחצוצרות וכל שופר הריעו לפני המלך אדוני ירם הים ומלואו תבל ויושביו נהרות ימחאו כף יחד הרים ירננו לפני אדוני קיווה לשפוט הארץ ישפוט תבל בצדק ועמים במישרים ילאי לי 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 איי לי לי ילאי לי 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 ילאי לי 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 איי לי לי ילאי לי 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 Okay, we are now ready for Lecha Dodi, which is on page 23. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Now, before we go on with this, I want to mention that we are using this piano for the first time in a service. This is the first time. And this is a piano that was donated by Leah in memory of Scott. It was Scott's piano. And it was donated during the pandemic. And so we haven't had it tuned. And I have a feeling that it's a little low. So even for me, this is getting low. So David, since you are a magical whiz at the piano, I put it down a whole step. So instead of asking you to just go up a half step, let's try it in as written, which is going to be low on this piano. Anyway, it's going to work perfectly for me. If you didn't understand that, don't worry about it. You can try to play as written? I know it's hard for David because he's so used to like working other kinds of magic on the piano. Here we go. Let's try it again. This is a tune by somebody named Daphne Rosenberg, who is part of the Nava Tehillah community. And they've written many, many, many songs for Erev Shabbat, some of which I do. I've even done one tonight so far. So here's her Lecha Dodi. Once again, Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala, pnei Shabbat nekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad, hishmiyanu el ha'miuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad, לשם ולתפארת ולתהילה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לקראת שבת לכו ונלכה, כי מקור הברכה, מראש מקדם נסוכה, סוף מעשה במחשבה תחילה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, מקדש מלך עיר מלוכה, קומי צאי מתוך הפכה, רב לך שבט בעמק הבכה, והוא יחמול עלייך חמלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, שבת נקבלה, התנערי מעפר קומי, לבשי בגדי תפארתך עמי, על יד בן ישי בית הלחמי, קרבה אל נפשי גאלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקב. Let's hear you. Beautiful. התעוררי, התעוררי, כי באורך קומי אורי, 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 שיר דברי, כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לא תבושי ולא תקלמי, מה תשתוכחי ומה תמי, בך יחסו עניי עמי, ונבנתה עיר אל תילה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, והיו למשיסה שוסייך, ורחקו כל מבלייך, יסיס עלייך אלוהייך, כי משוש חתן על כלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, ימין ושמאל תפרוצי, ואת אדוני תעריצי, על יד איש בן פרצי, ונשמחה ונגילה. You sing, לך לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, בואי ושלום עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני עם סגולה, בואי חלה בואי חלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה, לך דודי לקראת כלה, פני שבת נקבלה. Good Shabbos. That sounds so, aside from it being so dance-like, it just really, to me, expresses the Lecha Dodi, right? Come, my beloved. It's a beautiful way to welcome in Shabbat with that Lecha Dodi. And now we are going to turn to the Psalm for Shabbat on page 27. Mizmor Shir Liyom HaShabbat, Tov lehodot, lehodot l'Adonai, ulezamer leshimecha elyon, Tov lehodot, lehodot l'Adonai, ולזמר לשמך עליון, להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות, להגיד בבוקר חסדך ואמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלינה ועליגר. We're at the arrow on page 28. Tzaddik ata amari frach ke'eres balevanon yizkeh shetuli beveit Adonai bechatzrot Eloheinu yafrichu od yenuvun beseva deshenim vera'ananim yiyu lehagid ki ashar Adonai tzuri tzuri velo avlata bo. Good Shabbos. So what was that? Yeah. I know. Would you do us the honor, Leah, of reciting the bracha over the already lit candles? We only have, I think, one more week of early Shabbos, and then I think it's a week from tomorrow night that we spring forward, so that in a couple weeks from now, we'll be actually striking the match here. But now, we are going to make the bracha, led by Leah, over the already lit Shabbat candles. If everyone would please rise. done. Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Wave, shake hands, bump elbows, hug, whatever you're comfortable with doing. I'm waving to you. And Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Have a seat, because I'm actually going to say something before we do Baruch Hu. So I was talking to Rabbi Schuldenfrei today, and when we decided that he was going to stay at home tonight with his kids and have a Shabbat dinner with his kids at home earlier rather than later, so we were talking about if I should say something tonight. Do I want to say something tonight about the Parsha? And he said, well, we can look online for something real quick, And I said, well, I know Ilana Kershan usually has something very wonderful to say. So Ilana Kershan is somebody who is teaching, among other places. She lives in Israel, and she is teaching at the Fuchsburg Jerusalem Center, also known as the Conservative Yeshiva, which just happens to be where my daughter Yael is studying this year for her third year of rabbinical school. And in fact, Ilana Kershan is one of her teachers, and she thinks she's an awesome teacher. And I read a book that Ilana Kershan wrote called If All the Seas Were Ink, which is her journey, someone's nodding here, her journey through at least part of studying Daf Yomi, right? Going through, this is the practice of going through the entire Talmud, a page a day. It takes 7.5 years, a page a day. You need to be committed if you're going to take on something like that. It's an amazing thing, and thousands of people do it. I think it's an awesome thing. Anyway, so she writes something about the Parsha each week, and she's a wonderful writer and a wonderful thinker. And I decided to look at something, and Rabbi Schuldenfrei and I were both looked at this. He gave this to me, and I thought it was a very interesting thing, and I'm going to sort of summarize and read some of her words about this week's Parsha, which is Pekudei. By the way, it's not always its own Parsha. It is often paired up with last week's Parsha, Vayakhel, but this year we're in a leap year, so it's all by itself this week, and it's the last Parsha in the book of Shemot. And so this is how the book of Exodus ends, and it ends with the final bits and information and telling of the building of the Mishkan, the building of the tabernacle in the desert. And as we learn in previous parshiot, that the main artisan in charge of this is Bezalel, a young man, apparently by our standards today, a very young man, who was in charge of the building of the Mishkan. Now, he was in charge of it, but still, Moshe had certain instructions to give him. He just didn't go off on his own. So, Ilana Kershan brings up the following point, that the Talmud discusses a particular discrepancy between God's instructions to Moshe to tell Bezalel of how to build the Mishkan and what actually happened. So apparently, Moshe tells Bezalel, okay, build the ark first, right? That thing that's going to hold the Ten Commandments and also the broken ones, right? It's the what's inside. It's that most important thing that's inside the Mishkan. After you build that, build the house, right? Build the Mishkan. So go from small to big. What ends up happening, however, is that we see, actually in last week's Parsha, that Bezalel does it the other way. That he builds the Mishkan first and then ends up with building the ark. So in the Talmud, the rabbis tell this conversation between Moshe and Bezalel about this discrepancy. According to the rabbis, God actually did tell Moshe to tell Bezalel to start big and go little, to build the Mishkan first. But somehow the message got mixed up. And then Bezalel, when he gets that message from Moshe, he says, he was puzzled. And now I'm going to read what she wrote. He was puzzled as these instructions seemed inconsistent with his own experience and expertise as an artisan. And so he questioned Moshe about what he'd been told. Moshe, our teacher, he began politely and deferentially. The standard practice throughout the world is that a person builds a house and only afterward places the vessels inside of it. And yet you said to me, make the ark and the vessels and then the Mishkan afterwards. If I do it in the order that you commanded, where do I put the ark and the vessels first? So it seemed unlikely to Bezalel that God would want him first to build the ark and then to build the Mishkan. And so Bezalel went on to say to Moshe, possibly a little timidly, perhaps God told you to make the Mishkan, then the ark? And suddenly Moshe remembers, according to this part in the Talmud, oops, you're right. That's, God did, in fact, say first build the house, build the Mishkan, and put the small things in it. Then the Talmud records Moshe's response. Perhaps you were in God's shadow. How did you know that I goofed? How did you know? And he says, perhaps you were in God's shadow and you knew precisely what God said. And as we know, those of us who know Hebrew, the Hebrew word for in God's shadow is B'tzel El, right? So Bezalel is B'tzel El, literally means in the shadow of God. And this serves as the midrashic explanation for Bezalel's name. Bezalel was so wise that he could figure out God's instructions to Moshe without even hearing them directly, as if he were all along standing in the shadow of God's presence. Okay? And then she goes on here to say that, more about this back and forth. And then she says, for Moshe, a visionary leader who speaks face to face with God, it is clear that the ark, which is holding the 10 Commandments, which is super holy, right? And that Moshe went up on the mountain to get not once but twice. That's the be-all and end-all. That's the most important thing. But for Bezalel, the expert craftsman, it's obvious to him that the holy vessels can't exist without a place to house them. And so he assumes that the Mishkan has to be built first. And then I just thought I would read to you her ending and her takeaway from this. Her takeaway from this is as follows. As we learn from Moshe and Bezalel, it takes all kinds of talent to build a home for God. I think about this lesson nearly every Shabbat afternoon when my kids embark on an elaborate construction project involving blocks, cushions, chairs, kitchen utensils, bed sheets, and stuffed animals. One week they build a synagogue, the next week a swimming pool, the next week a sushi shop. Usually it's my daughter, she says, who conceives of the idea and my son who directs the construction. Let's make the sushi for homeless people, says my daughter, and my son responds, we'll give them xylophone sticks for chopsticks. They don't always see eye to eye, but in those moments when they are able to appreciate one another's talents and contributions, I sometimes imagine that I am catching a glimpse of the indwelling of God's presence behind the Fisher-Price cash register. So the idea being that there are different ways to approach something, and she doesn't say this, but in a sense, we compromise on the ways that we approach these things. I would say this also shows us there isn't a right and a wrong, but that they did end up going in one direction. And so I just thought that was interesting that the Talmud recounts this whole thing and that there's this discrepancy. And the Talmud's an amazing book. With lots of wonderful bits of information, and not just bits of information, manners of thinking and ways to approach things. So with that, we are going to turn to the Baruch Hu on page 39a, and please rise for the Baruch Hu. Lai, 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 nai, 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 lai, 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 da, 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 lai, 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 Baruch et Adonai Baruch Adonai Hamivorach Leolam Leolam Vaed. Lai dai dai lai dai lai dai la lai dai lai dai 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 la lai lai dai dai lai dai dai lai 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 dai la lai 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 dai 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 lai dai dai Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher b'shvaro meraglim. Umavir yom umevi laila, umavdil ben yom uven laila, Adonai tzvaot shemo, El chai v'kayam, tamidim lo chaleinu, leolam voed, Baruch atah Adonai, Hama'ariv aravim. Page 40, Ahavat olam beit Yisrael. V'avatcha al tasir mimenu li'olamim, Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha v'chol levavcha uv'chol nafshecha uv'chol miodecha v'hayu hadavarim ha'ele asher anochi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha v'shinantam levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shiftecha v'veitecha uvlechtecha v'derech uv'shochbecha uv'kumecha וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך, ובשעריך, והיה. Continue with the second and third paragraphs of the Shema on page 42. Adonai Elohechem emet v'emunah kol tov v'kayim aleinu ki Adonai Eloheinu ve'in zol adon v'nach v'shvaro We're on the top of page 44. U'malchuto b'ratzon kiblu aleihem Moshe u'Miriam u'bnei Yisrael lechanu shira v'simcha rabba v'yamru chulam mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai mi kamocha nedar b'kodesh nora teilot o sefele nora teilot o sefele Malechutecha ra'u vanecha bokei ayam לפני משה זה אלי אנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ונאמר כי פדרנו את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום ועמידנו מכאנו לחיים פרוס עלינו סוכת שבת ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו עלינו 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 ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים ושמרו please rise בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם אותי לעולם אותי לעולם ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת שבס לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם וביום השביעי שבת וינפש שבת וינפש ביום השביעי ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה ויעמד יברך חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומכון ובחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה בעגלה ובזמן קריב ויאמרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מבורך לעולם וליומי עולמיה יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם וינשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה בריחו לעילא מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה תאמירן בעולמה ויאמרו Amen. The silent Amida for Erev Shabbat can be found starting on page 47 and going through page 52. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. עושה שלום במרומיו, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן. Yammaranai lai 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 yananai nai 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 yananai lai 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 yammaranai nai 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 yananai lai 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 yananai lai 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 yananai lai 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 Yoseh shalom bimromav הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו amen. We're on page 53 for Vayachulu. Lai, alai, alai, ai, na, 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 ai, la, 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 lai, alai, la, la, ai, la, 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 ai, la, 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 la. Vayachulu hashamayim ve'haaretz v'chol tziva'am. Vayachulu hashamayim ve'haaretz v'chol tziva'am. Vayechal Elohim bayom hashvi'i melachto asher asa. Vayishbot bayom hashvi'i mikol melachto asher asa. Lai amay na lai, hai la la lai la lai, la lai la Lai la lai lai lai. Vayevarech Elohim et Yom HaShvi'i Vayekadesh oto. Vayevarech Elohim et Yom HaShvi'i Vayekadesh oto. Kivo Shabbat Mikol Melachto Asher bara Elohim Lasot Layam Baina Lai Yitganav yikra shemei Rabbah Beyalma divra chirutev yom lichvachodei b'chayachon v'mechon v'chay d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala v'zman kariv yimeru Amen Yesh mei Rabbah mevorach li'olam u'li'omei omaya Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yipor v'yitoma v'naseh v'yidodar v'yidolai v'yidolal shmei l'kudesha Brichu li'elam mikol brachata v'shirata tushbrata v'nechamata damiron b'yama v'yimeru Amen. Titkabel tzloton uvalton d'chol Yisrael kodam avuhani v'shmaya v'yimeru Amen. Yehi shlam rabba min shemaya v'chaim aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'yimeru Amen. Ohaseh shalom b'ibramam u'ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'kol Yisrael v'kol yoshvei tevel v'yimeru Amen. There's the Kiddush cup. Okay, if everyone would please rise, hold your imaginary Kiddush cup. Maybe the next phase of getting back to normal will be having the little Kiddush cups to hand out on Friday night. Yeah, you've got your thermos. There you go. Okay. Okay. What was that? Okay. No whining. Page 55, Kiddush. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei peri agafen. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'yahava uvratzon inchilanu zikaron lemaaseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh zecher litziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'acharta v'yotanu kidashta mikol amim v'shabbat kodshecha b'yahava uveratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. Down the hatch. All righty. We remain standing for Aleinu on page 56. Aleinu l'shabeach la'adon hakol latet gedula liyotzer breshit shelo asanu kigoyei haratzot velo samanu kemishpechot ha'adama shelo sam chelkenu kahem V'gor aleinu kechol amonam va'anachnu korim u'nishtachavim u'modim lifnei melech malchei amlachim hakadosh Baruch Hu. שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר הארץ, ומשב יקרה בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובה מרומים. הוא אלוהינו עינות, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבביך. כי אדוני הוא אלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת עינו. כן נקבל לך אדוני אלוהים. ככתוב בתורתך אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד, ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ. ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו You may be seated. Before reciting the Mourner's Kaddish on page 58, I would like to announce, in case you did not see in the email that went out this week, the passing of Peter Epstein, a really lovely man. He's survived by his wife, Pauline Davis, his brother Frank, his children, Stephen and Shira, and their families, which include 4 grandchildren. The funeral was yesterday, and to the family and to the family and friends of Peter, we send our condolences. As I said, really a lovely, lovely man. This week, we have a short list of yortzites to read because it is Adar Sheni, it is second Adar. We start off with those whose yortzeit is tonight and tomorrow on Shabbat. And I see the first one on the list, which I knew about, is my Uncle Irv. So I will start the list of this coming week's yortzeit with my Uncle Irv Dubin, Bessie Glazer, Rebecca Haas, Herbert B. Kanofsky, Philip Partnow, Bella Schuldenfrei, Maury Abrams, Abraham Barron, Jacob Funk, Sue Eisenberg, Marla Diane Mallon, Ida Schleicher, William Zimmerman, Leah Friend, Inez June Lavender, Labush Nathanson, and Martin C. Hoff. Are there any other yortzites that I did not mention? So for those who are observing a yortzeit, who are in mourning, or would like to just stand and say the Kaddish, and for those of you who are online and doing the same, please join me in the Mourner's Kaddish on page 58. Yit Gadal v'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divrach Hirutei v'yamlich Malchutei, B'chayechon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru, Amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah Mevorach Leolam u'leolmei olmaya. Yit Barach v'yishtabach v'yit Po'ar v'yit Romam v'yit Naseh v'yit Hadar v'yit Aleh v'yit Halal Shemei Dekudsha Brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbechata v'nechemata da'amiran bi'alma v'imru. Amen. Yehei Shlama Rabbah min Shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Oseh shalom bimromav, huya oseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru. Amen. Grant that the memories of those who have gone before us be a source of strength for us and for everyone of the house of Israel. May the souls of our departed find peace in your sheltering care, and may we all be blessed with peace, tranquility, and the fullness of life. And we all say, Amen. All right, so what's shul without announcements? So I will make just a few announcements. First of all, thank you, David, and Shehachianu on using this piano for the first time. how wonderful that you're here for this, Leah. Thank you very much for the honor of remembering Scott with this piano. And
So wonderful to hear David and this piano together.
yeah,
Scott, especially when he started playing ragtime.
yeah. So that's wonderful. That's wonderful.
I know you made him happy.
Yeah.
Very.
Scott, we're playing to you. I would like to remind everybody not only of the change in masking vis-a-vis the county, but for us here, we now, as of this Shabbat, we are no longer requiring sign-ups to come to shul. So come whenever you can. We would love to see you. It's wonderful to be back in community. So don't worry about sign-ups. I don't even think we're going to be needing to show our vaccination card at the door, right? Yeah, no longer checking that. So just like the old days, drive in and just come to shul. Isn't that marvelous? That's marvelous. And speaking of coming to shul, everyone is welcome to come to shul tomorrow morning, where our darshanit will be our assistant rabbi candidate, Rabbi Haley Goldstein. I met her today. She's a lovely person, and I very much look forward to hearing her Dvar Torah tomorrow. She is also going to be doing some text study and a Q&A following lunch. So there's going to be shul, at which she'll speak. Then there's going to be lunch, a kiddush lunch. Then we will come back in here for a Q&A. For some study, and then a Q&A. It will all be live streamed. Lunch won't be live streamed, but services and the following text study and Q&A, and that will be at 1 o'clock. So after shul, eat your lunch if you're not going to be here in person, and then turn back on, come back to your whatever device at 1 o'clock if you're not here in person. Okay, aside from that, I want to mention that Purim is coming up. Purim is really just in a couple of weeks, and we are going to have on Erev Purim, which is Wednesday night, March 16th, we're going to have a Megillah dinner theater. We're going to be reading Megillah. We're going to be watching some videos that people are making. We are going to be singing some songs. We are going to be eating food all at the same time, and that will be our Erev Purim. And then on Sunday the 20th is our big carnival is back. Purim World is back on March 20th. So these are just a few things that I want to announce in addition to our Family Friday Shabbat services, which are a week from tonight. We have Family Friday Shabbat services. It doesn't mean it's only for families with young kids, but it is also for families with young kids. So anybody is welcome and everybody is welcome to that. And with that, I will ask everyone to turn not to Yigdal tonight, but to Adon Olam, which is on page 211. And we're going to do this very upbeat tune that a couple people here will remember from doing it in a choral arrangement, but we're not going to do a choral arrangement of it. It sounds like a Circus Calliope tune, but it's just felt like something fun tonight. By Dov Frumer. Adon Olam asher malach v'terem kol yitzir nivra li'et nasa b'chefzo kol azai melech shemo nikra Adon Olam asher malach בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל, אזי מלך שמו נקרא, ויחרי ככלות הכל, לבדו ימלוך נורא, והוא היה, והוא הווה, והוא יהיה בתפארה. אדון עולם אשר מלך, בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל, אזי מלך שמו נקרא, והוא אחד ואין שני, להמשילו להכבירה, בלי ראשית בלי תכלית, ולא העוז והמשרה, אדון עולם אשר מלך, בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל, אזי מלך שמו נקרא, והוא אלי וחי גואלי, וצור חבלי בעת צרה, והוא ניסי ומנוס לי, מנת כוסי ביום אקרא, אדון עולם אשר מלך, בטרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל, אזי מלך שמו נקרא, בידו אף כדרוכי, בעת אישן ועירה, ועם רוחי גביעתי, אדוני לי ולא אירא, אדון עולם אשר מלך, טרם כל יציר נברא, לעת נשא בחפצו כל, אזי מלך שמו נקרא. שבת שלום.